Hi, my name is Ed Coban, and I am Assistant Music Director and House Band Coordinator for the Native American Music Awards, and I am here to tell you about my friend Cody Blackbird today. Cody is a five-time Native American Music Award winning flutist who is taking the native flute to places that it has never been. Cody blends the native flute with more contemporary styles like rock and blues for a style he calls alternative rock. Cody's been traveling the country as of late, playing some pretty big venues such as the Roxy in LA, the Brooklyn Bowl in Las Vegas, Anchorage, Alaska, and every place in between. So you will be hearing a lot about him in the near future, and I'm really excited that Rob's talking about him today so you can look back and say, hey, I knew that guy when. So I'll let Cody and Rob tell you more about Cody, but I'm thankful to be here, and here's Rob and Cody.
So, Cody, thanks a lot for joining me today on Long Island Sounds.
Glad to join you here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. I guess we should always start at the beginning. Tell me your history, where how you got started and where you grew up.
So I grew up all over. My family originally is from, well, most of them are from South Dakota. We grew up in Alaska. My dad worked for the government, so grew up in Idaho, and then spent
Wow,
most of my youth and teenage years and high school years in Alaska. Um, And yeah, so my family is of Dakota and Eastern Band Cherokee descent, and my mother's family is Romani Gypsy. So got a varying degree of kind of culture on both sides. I think that have been instrumental in my musical upbringing and what has inspired me.
that's awesome. Um, what what um what gave you the interest to start the flute? I mean, obviously, with your native background, is that how you got into the native flute?
So I had a really up and down kind of um, I don't know if you want to. I was classified as what they call ADHD, so I was all over the place as a kid, right?
Mm-hmm.
And ceremonial music and flute music were the only things that like kind of let me just separate from that rapid go 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 that my mind was always in.
Yeah.
Really is what I fell asleep to every night, either be ceremonial music or uh, flute music. And so there was that, and then we were out in Anchorage at an event, and we saw a band called Medicine Dream, who are also a Native American Music Award-winning act. And I saw what Paul Pike was doing, incorporating the native flute into contemporary rock and roll, and I think that's when it first started. And I was like, I want to play that instrument. So ended up getting a flute, playing the flute, learning, teaching myself and watching other players and just kind of coming up with my own style and love of the instrument.
Well, you definitely have a pretty cool style, and the was it the Rolling Stone article that had labeled you the alternative rock flutist?
Yeah, I believe it was. There's been a few that have spit that out, and we kind of just owned it. That's where it came from. That was nothing that we were like, oh, this sounds cool. Let's say alternative. It definitely came from uh, people's kind of tag on us and reviews that we would get. But I think Rolling Stone said that as well. Yeah.
Well, congratulations on being the first native flutist to be featured in Rolling Stone. It's got to be quite an accomplishment.
It, I said it the other day. It feels strange to say still. I checked with quite a few people because I was looking. I was like, I wonder who when the article came out. I was like, I wonder who else has been featured in Rolling Stone. What other native flutists are? And I couldn't find any. There was none, and
You're
I
right.
was really beside myself that that happened to be that way. It was really humbling for sure.
That's very cool. Now, you had mentioned the ceremonial flute. When you were growing up, did you attend ceremonies and powwows? Because obviously, you and I both know there's a difference between ceremony dances as opposed to the powwows?
Yeah, so for most of my childhood, we would go back and spend our summers in South Dakota, and so we would be back home for ceremony then. And then growing up in Alaska, there wasn't a lot of powwows. There are a few here and there, but they have like intertribal gatherings where all the indigenous people of the community come together, because a lot of people don't understand Anchorage, Alaska is one of the most multicultural cities in the world.
Oh yeah.
We have like 230 languages and dialects spoken within the city.
Oh wow.
And so it was really, to me, powwows are awesome. They're a great time to get together, but in Alaska, it's totally it's a different vibe, because while powwows will bring in everybody, sometimes this is really like a group conglomeration and community of BIPOC people that are coming together for a celebration. So that was kind of my powwow upbringing and experience, if you will, in Alaska. But we did get down to powwows in the lower 48 quite often too, and grew up around that as well.
So how old were you when you moved up to Alaska? Must have been hard to but you said you were going back and forth. Um, how did you end up getting into the native circles up in Alaska?
I think it just sort of came like through it's a really small, especially the native community in Anchorage is really small.
Mm-hmm.
And I think within the first 6, 8 months of living up there, I was like 8 years old at the time. And my dad had connected with quite a few people. We went to our first powwow, and they had like different drum group practices and things like that. Even if there wasn't a powwow, everybody would get together like on a Thursday night and have like drum practice. Everybody would dress out and dance and whatnot. So I think that was like within the first year of living there, we had connected with some local people, and then went on to grow with from there.
That's awesome. Now, how did you going from Anchorage, Alaska, all the powwows out there, how did you get involved with the Shinnecock out here in Long Island, out in Southampton?
So I think it was like back in 2008, 2009, somewhere there. Um, when I started recording my flute music, I would I would travel to powwows as a vendor. So I sold jewelry, DVDs, CDs, a little bit of everything.
Mm-hmm.
But that wasn't my goal. My whole goal was like show up, introduce myself to the powwow committee, say, hey, can I exchange, a performance for a booth for the weekend? And then I was able to play my music and market my music as well.
Yeah, that's a great plan.
Yeah, it all worked out. And so that's how it started. And I think I was first at Shinnecock in 2010, maybe, just doing the same thing, performing out there at the East Coast powwows and vending and selling my music. And yeah.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing you this Labor Day weekend. I guess a lot of people don't know that the Shinnecock powwow is on its 70. Well, we missed 2 years because of the pandemic, and then when I had seen you out there, it was the 73rd annual Shinnecock. So are they going to do the 74th, or is it going to be the 76th annual powwow?
Well, probably just split the difference and I'll say it's the 75th.
There you go. I'm looking for, and then you're going to have Ed out there.
Yeah, it's going to be a good time.
Yep. So I noticed that over the years that I've known you, starting back in the NAMMYs, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but how has I mean, you as a performer and you as an artist and a musician, you have evolved quite, you have band changes. How did you guys start? What was the band when you started, and what's the current lineup, and how did you get to the current lineup that it is now?
So the band was came about in a really weird way. I got asked to do a gig in South Dakota for anti-uranium mining event, and said yes. And then the organizers said, "Man, you know what would be cool behind your flute music is a band." And Kurt Olson, who's with Indigenous, he's been with Brule, he's drummed for Keith Secola,
Oh, wow.
the Nashville Cat as well. So he drums with everybody in Nashville. He happened to be in town doing some gigs with Brule. And so I got him, and then John Frazier, who's a Grammy Award winning artist, and, of course, in the NAMI fam there. And known him for years, so had him on percussion, Kurt on drums, had a couple local players on guitar and bass that were really just total amazing professionals, and we had a blast. We just
Hmm.
jam session. There was really, I don't think we had one written song that we did. Everything was just instrumental, jam music, and that's when it kind of clicked with me, like, oh, I want to do this. And we've been through quite a few players throughout the years that have all had their instrumental, instrumental piece um, in the band, and it started out. We had lost a drummer that we were with and a guitarist in like a few months,
Hmm.
just because of varying schedules and personal reasons, whatever it may be. And we had gone to Morgantown to do a gig, West Virginia, for West Virginia University's American Indian Studies program. And that night, Caleb and I were having pizza, and we walk outside of the pizza joint, and we see like four guys just busking on the street corner, and they're all about our age, maybe a little younger. And Caleb looks at me and he says, "You want to go ask them if they want a tour?" And I was like, "Yeah, let's do it." And I said, "Hey, can I jam with you guys?" And I pulled out a flute and I jammed with them. And we were like, "Would you guys like to tour with us?" And they were like, "Okay, well, let us think about it. Give us the details, and let's schedule time to get together next week." So we did that, and we went back to Morgantown from our sister's house, and we thought, well, we're just going to go get some dinner and talk about this. And at the end of the talk, they said, "Well, we quit our jobs and we packed up our apartment, and we're ready for you to come over to the apartment so we can load up the van with our stuff." And those were the first two that we really forged the sound with and came up with a lot of the music together, that came to be what we've worked on up until maybe 4 years ago.
Yep.
Though some of the music that we've come out with in the past 4 years has been music that we wrote back then that we've just sat on and come out with. So and from there on, there's been plenty of others who have had their hand in it. Current lineup is Justin Highland on drums. Caleb is on percussion and backing vocals. We've got Michael Oden on keys, Ed Coben on guitar, and we've got Adrian Wall on bass. And of course, he's got Interstate as well as his trio and his artwork as well. So there are some times where Adrian can't make it, but he's with us as much as he can.
Well, he's another NAMI Award winner too with Interstate.
Yeah, totally.
So, but
It's
how
awesome.
long have you been involved with the NAMIs, and how did that come about? Just a normal submission and the voting process?
No, actually, so it's really funny. Up in Alaska, um, we had heard that the NAMIs were coming up to do an award winners showcase, and I had a we had a family drum group at the time, and we had heard around that they were asking for a drum group to do the opening.
Hmm.
So they had advertised like a meet and greet event at the hotel, the host hotel. We went over and we got to meet. That's the first time I ever met Joanne Moore and Joe Firecrow, and met Donald Kelly,
Yep.
Cody, all of them, and introduced ourselves. And they were like, "Yeah, for sure. Let's get you over to the show tomorrow night. Let's have you guys, perform for it." And so I was, I think, 12, maybe 11, 12 years old, 13, something like that. Um, and just found myself around some of my heroes, like,
Right.
in, and so that was my first introduction. And they came back the next year. We did the same thing. Um, and that was, yeah, my first intro to the Nammies. And well, I want to say actually, that was my first personal intro. I knew about the Nammies prior because of bands like Medicine Dream and Balmua and Alaska Axe, who had been award winners and recipients and performed at the Nammies. So anytime that happened, they took over the native radio station airwaves and would play the Nammies on live radio.
Yeah.
That was really my first introduction, was listening to the Nammies on 90.3 KMBA in Anchorage. Shout out
And
to them.
from there, you started meeting all your heroes, John Trudell and Keith
Yeah.
Sokola. And I mean, were those influential artists? Were they an inspiration to your music as well, or just people that you looked up to,
Oh no,
being
like,
native?
instrumental to the inspiration, like, for sure. I have a CD of Eulally's album where Pure Faye like wrote to me. I was like 10 or 11 years old, and she, etched in their positive notes and love. And years later, I'm, doing shows and working with her and call her a great friend, and just people across the board, like you said, John and Keith, who all of these people, John, Keith, Peter Fay, Eulali, um, Joseph Firecrow, all of them
Yeah.
played a inspirational role. Joanne Shenandoah, I
Oh,
mean,
absolutely.
all of them. And I was actually, I remember one time I was at Paul Pike from Medicine Dream. I was in his house. They were having a get together, and he had, the rack of CDs. And I was going through, and I was just like, man, John Trudell, really love to like see him perform live someday.
Yeah,
And so, I mean, those are moments that as a kid I didn't really think about, because I was just like, oh yeah, this is happening. But later on in life, I remember that, and I'm like, wow, that's really crazy. I mean, it's been fun. Yeah.
definitely. And from what I understand, I guess Ellen and the Namies are going to be back in business this fall. I mean, unless something else happens, I'm not sure, and I hope not, because obviously, aside
Yeah.
from seeing you and Ed and Caleb in Shinnecock in September, we're one big family when we all get together out at the Namies. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like having a powwow of our own when we all get together. What other influential artists, and let's stick with the native flutists. Who do you look up to as another flutist like yourself?
Well, Joseph Firecrow is, as I mentioned earlier, he's like my go-to inspiration of people I listen to. Of course, like everybody who's into flute has also listened to Nakai. I love some of
Oh
his
yeah,
collaborations he's done with people. Um, yeah, I mean, Tony Duncan is phenomenal. Adrian, going back to Adrian Wall is also a phenomenal flutist.
that's right. I did. I mean, yeah, I know him as the for Interstate, but he doesn't play any flute on Interstate.
Yeah, no, but he does with his new trio, which is
Okay.
really just, yeah, fabulous. And then, yeah, I mean, and Edco as well.
Yeah.
Both great flutists. So I don't know. I'm surrounded by really cool, um, people and flutists and music makers that are all seem to have a really awesome vibe and
Yeah.
come from family, like you said.
So with the experience with your world travels and visiting other cultures, what was it like for teaching like American indigenous music to the you had gone down to Australia, correct?
Yeah, I've been to Australia and Japan, and then South America as well.
And how did they take their music? Was it something that, I mean, I would assume a culture like Japan, they have the wind instruments as well, but someplace like Australia, where they really, I mean, I'm not really too familiar with their indigenous music, even though they have a huge indigenous population down there.
Yeah, both. I mean, Australia was very receptive. I got to play with an amazing didgeridoo player. We did a show together in Melbourne, Australia, um, and he's a Aboriginal elder and musician, and actor as well. And we played together down there. Joey is his name, and just a really understanding camaraderie between the two, us both understanding each other's struggles within our communities and also our struggles within the music communities of what we're trying to do and accomplish through our musical ambitions, culturally and um, just putting information and interest out there in what we do to give people that awareness that we're still around and what you hear isn't the norm, what you
Hmm.
think the norm or what you think isn't the norm, and what you hear from indigenous musicians that are coming out today, it comes from a storyline and it comes from a basis of something.
Hmm.
It's not just musical notes being played. There's a whole story behind every note and every
Hmm.
musical aspect. And we talked a lot about that. And same in Japan with some of the people that I met over there. The respect in Japan is just, it's insane. The true, um, I guess, just depths they go to, go out of their way to learn and educate themselves on other cultures.
Hmm.
And it truly, I don't, like, one moment that I had that was a really somber moment. We were at Nagoya Castle in Nagoya, Japan, and I was like, this is beautiful, this is all original. And they were like, no, it's not original, they had to rebuild it after the war. And I sat and I was like talking to the translator, and I said, they did the same thing in World War II here that they did to our people's sacred sites over there, because they knew the importance. They knew that if you attack that heart, if you attack that medicine, and that's a monastery that
Right.
they did this across the board. And so I found this sincere understanding of the indigenous story of the Americas, with them. They wanted to know. They were happy to. I got a whole group of them, like 20 of them, interested in Standing Rock. They ended up all flying over to Standing Rock. This
Oh, no
was,
kidding.
and so yeah, they were just really supportive and wanted to be involved.
Well, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So with you creating your own style, developing your own style, you had the drums and guitar behind the flute, as opposed to again Nakai and Robert Mirabel and even Joe Firecrow. You're taking your music to a whole new level. I guess maybe that's why they're calling you the alternative rock flutist. Um, where do you see yourself going from here?
Well, I really, there's a saying that Joe used to tell me, and it was always put the flute first.
Mm-hmm.
And then he would say, "Don't get off the bus." Him and Joanne would both say that.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that this whole mission of what we're trying to accomplish with the music is just it, it's just one to create a economically viable situation to help more people.
Mm-hmm.
And so my goal is to truly put that flute first and do everything I can to take it to a new level and show people that it exists. Because I think a lot of times people hear flute in a traditional manner and they get turned off because
Exactly.
I hear this everywhere. It's, but there's the way we're doing it and we're presenting it is in a way that might get people interested and involved. And if that happens, then it's just a ripple effect onward to what can happen. And I'm truly just wanting to use it all as a catalyst to be able to bring some really cool opportunities and situations to our communities, our youth, and those that can benefit and want to benefit off, music
Mm-hmm.
and artistic avenues to put it out. There's so much talent within our community, so much talent.
Great.
And
Yeah.
I think there's just not enough platform out there available to the youth and people within the communities that want to put their art out there, that it's kind of like it boxes people in,
Mm-hmm.
uh, not being able to know where to turn to.
Yeah.
That's the whole goal. Take this as far as we can. We're really blessed. This past week we met with um, a couple really amazing songwriters that we're going to be working with, um, and we've got some new tunes in the works right now that really excited to get out there to the world and share with people.
Yeah. Well, speaking of musicians that you've been working with, you've been hand in hand with Portugal the Man for the last couple of years. How did that come about?
So that came about. First of all, as a kid, I remember their band, Anatomy of a Ghost, which
Mm-hmm.
they were in the Alaska days, in the early days, and not to say, I was just a kid then, but I do remember very much so seeing the billing and hearing about them then. You flash years later, we're in Portland, we're doing a show, and a good friend of ours, Fish Martinez, who I actually met as a child in Alaska, who came up to do a bunch of youth programs up there and theater workshops. He's from Portland. We've stayed in touch over the years. He hits me up. He says, "Hey, I let Portugal the Man know that we're doing this show at the Star Theater. They might come through." And I'm like, "Portugal the Man?" And then he's like, "From Alaska." And I was like, "Wait a minute, and I put all the dots together. I was like, oh wow." And I realized who they were, and we have tons of mutual friends
Yeah.
back home in Alaska. I'd never met any of the band up until that night. Um, but yeah, it's just been from that night on, it's been just a tight connection. I've gotten to hang out with them numerous occasions, and they're always the same amazing people putting themselves and their platform out there for indigenous causes and the forefront of the
Yeah.
issues trying to be presented.
Yeah. Hopefully you guys get to collaborate again. But um, one thing I did want to ask you is that aside from being um, the outstanding flutist, you're also a vocalist, the songwriter, and the performer. But I read that you're also a motivational speaker. Um, how did that come about?
So I don't really know, and I don't know that the term motivational. I don't know how that got pinned. It's probably my trying to make it sound, but it came from working with youth um, I was doing a lot of, anti-suicide events, kind of across the board, and just as a suicide survivor myself and somebody who's dealt with depression my entire life,
Mm-hmm.
I understand that. I'm somebody who gets it and understands how like down and out you can feel and feel like there's nowhere to turn. And
Right.
so I think that's kind of where it started, was on that aspect, but then I started kind of developing it more, and there's several kind of subjects that we tackle, that we do from elementary all the way on up to, college, um, type talks and things like that, where we're discussing the importance of culture and music, and the importance of including BIPOC community members in, um, cultural awareness settings within cities and community boards, etc., like that. And that's not just me, that's with a team of, others that we're putting together kind of these round table discussions. So it's been really fun to do that kind of avenue of talking, and just putting what I have to say to a collective, that where we can all kind of come together and kind of come up with ideas to help our direct circles. And I think that's really what it's all about, is, a lot of people focus on the greater good of everything, but if you can just, everybody affects and works within their own circles, and then it just spreads that way. And so it's really not that hard when you get down to it, and how to come together and create awareness that can really spread.
Yep, definitely. Well, I know that you're in the studio. You've been working on some new stuff, so I'm going to let you go. I do appreciate your time, and hopefully soon you can make it up to New York City, and we'll catch a show.
Yeah, that would be great.